But our top story this hour today is the state-mandated deadline to relocate all inmates under the age of 18 from Rikers Island to the Horizon Juvenile Center in the Bronx. That move has correction officers expressing concern about their own safety, and already we are hearing about fights inside the new facility with reported injuries involving officers. We want to get right over to New York One's Amy Yensi. She's standing by with an update for us on this exclusive report. Amy, what are we hearing about these supposed fights that took place today?
Well, Roma, we're hearing that a fight broke out this morning between correctional officers and some inmates. And I can also tell you that 4 officers were injured. One of the persons that were injured was an officer that reported having some chest pains. Now, we were the only crew here when an ambulance and firefighters showed up after this reported fight that happened sometime this morning. Again, 4 correctional officers were hurt in a fight at the juvenile center. Now, these are details you will only see on New York One. The fight happened sometime this morning. We were expecting to see young inmates being transported from Rikers Island to the Horizon Juvenile Center here in the South Bronx. But a staffer told us off camera that they have been bringing in 16 and 17-year-olds for a few days now. They were brought here quietly well before the state deadline. This matters because correctional officers have been speaking out against this transfer. They are not allowed to use pepper spray in a juvenile facility, something they say makes them feel less safe. And this fight is an example we're sure they will point to. That's why the timing of the fight is so critical. The Correction Officers Union is asking a judge to stop the city from sending them here. I can also tell you that most, if not all, of the people transferred are 16 and 17 years old. A spokesperson with the Administration for Children's Services tells New York One that, quote, all youth have been transferred from Rikers to Horizon Juvenile Center. That's 93 people under the age of 18. ACS will be speaking out about the transfer later this week. No word yet on the fight that we're hearing about. But again, exclusive details on New York One. We can tell you that there was a fight this morning between correctional officers and the juveniles at this center. 4 of them were injured. 1 of them reported having some sort of chest pain. I can also tell you that we saw the ambulance leave without any patients. So if there are some injuries, they're not as serious. That's the latest from here in the South Bronx. Amy Yensi, back to you.
All right, good work there, Amy. Thank you very much.
Today's the mandated deadline to relocate all inmates under the age of 18 from Rikers Island to the Horizon Juvenile Center in the Bronx. But the move has correction officers expressing safety concerns, and it comes as we hear about fights inside the new facility. Our Amy Yensi joins us now with the exclusive details. Amy.
Well, sources tell New York One that a fight broke out this morning between the correctional officers, some of them, and some juvenile detainees here at the center. We're also told that 4 officers sustained injuries, including 1 that reported having some chest pains. Now, we were the only crew here when the ambulance showed up, and firefighters as well reported to the scene. Take a look at the video. You can see that the fight happened sometime this morning, and crews showed up to respond to it. We were here expecting to see young inmates being transported from Rikers Island to the Horizon Juvenile Center here in the South Bronx. But a staffer told us off camera that they have been bringing in 16 and 17-year-olds since Friday night. They were brought here quietly well before the state deadline. This matters because correctional officers have been speaking out against this transfer. They are not allowed to use pepper spray in a juvenile facility, something they say makes them feel less safe. That's why the timing of this fight we're hearing about is so critical. The Corrections Officers Union is asking a judge to block the city from sending them to work here. I can also tell you that most, if not all, of the people transferred, again, 16 and 17 years old. A spokesperson with the Administration of Children's Services tells New York One, quote, all youth have been transferred from Rikers to Horizon Juvenile Center. We spoke to a union leader who represents the social services staff here. He says this transfer was a rush job.
The city was not ready for this move. We've been trying to, our president, President Wells, has been trying to get this date pushed back. The kids prior here had criminal histories, but we're just bringing a different culture. We're bringing a Rikers Island culture over to Horizon Juvenile Center, and it's pretty much just a mini Rikers Island because you still have the correction officers dealing with these kids.
ACS tells New York One that a total of 93 people under the age of 18 being housed here. Again, on the first day of this transfer, we're told a fight breaks out between correctional officers and teenagers at this juvenile center. When we saw the ambulance leave, there were no patients on board. Stick with New York One for details. That's the latest from here in the South Bronx. Amy Yensi, back to you.
Thanks, Amy.
They're still in custody, just not at Rikers Island. By Monday morning, all 16 and 17-year-olds held at the infamous jail had been moved here, the Horizon Juvenile Center in the South Bronx. The union representing the center's social services staff says the city and state rushed the process.
We've been fighting. If you check the records of the city council, we've been up and back and forth to Albany trying to get this date pushed back.
The teens were moved in advance of a new state law forbidding offenders under the age of 18 from being prosecuted as adults, a landmark reform to provide them with more rehabilitation and education. The law took effect at midnight Monday, and the Horizon Center was quickly tested. Our cameras were the only ones on scene when emergency crews responded to a call that 4 officers were hurt in a fight with some teen inmates.
Since they've been there, we've had at least 6 to 8 incidents. They're gang members, and for whatever reason, somebody thought that changing the zip code was going to change the behavior.
Paramedics left without any patients, but critics of the transfer say it shows the center and staff did not get enough training to handle the 93 new juvenile inmates. The 16 and 17-year-olds were quietly moved here Friday night ahead of the deadline. Correction officers will not be allowed to use pepper spray in this facility. Their union has expressed concern about the policy.
I want to ensure that officers, correction officers, ACS workers, and administrative staff are working in a safe environment. And I also want to ensure that the 16 and 17-year-olds that are being housed here are also being housed in a safe environment.
The correction officers had opposed being assigned here, but a judge ordered them to show up for work, along with workers for the Administration for Children's Services. The mayor's office says the goal is to phase out the correction officers over the next 18 months. In the Mott Haven